Welcome back to another Habs Summer Target with Hockey Coach Franchise. And we have Marko back in the house, and Mr. Enortap is with me tonight on the great show. It's all about the Habs pipeline projection. And Marko, explain a little bit more what we're going to do.
Coach, I think there's a lot of other Habs content creators that, have been releasing their list of top 10 Habs prospects. We thought we would do it maybe a bit differently, right? So we did go ahead and we did kind of pick who we think arbitrarily are the 10 best prospects in the Habs pipeline. Obviously, there's a little bit of criteria that we use. Like if a player's already kind of made the roster, like Slavkovsky, Joshua Roy, players like that, we're not including them in this list because we feel they've already made the roster. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to have what we think are the 10 top prospects in the Habs pipeline. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually rank them, not in order, but in order of where we think what kind of NHL career they're going to have. So it should be interesting, right? So you'll get a sense of not only are they the top prospect, but are they going to be an impact NHLer? Are they just going to be an NHLer that plays 250, 300 games? Are they going to be a bubble guy that just kind of comes in for a cup of coffee at the NHL level and then goes back down? Or maybe even goes back to Europe. Should be interesting, Coach. We'll kind of go through the list. I don't know, Enortap and I, we tend to agree, but I'm going to do my best to try to disagree with them and make it fun.
Like Marko said, this is not a ranking from 1 to 10 or 10 to 1. It's just we pick a players on the pipeline for the Montreal Canadiens. First players, guys, Filip Mesar, draft a 26 overall pick in 2022 by Ken Hughes. After Juraj Slavkovsky, number 1, Mesar played the last 2 seasons in OHL. Struggled a bit at the second half of the first year. And OHL became better this year. Have a great stat until he got hurt with a concussion during the second half of the season. Finished a little bit strong, but a little bit concerned about Filip Mesar. Let's start with Enortap on that one.
You're absolutely right, Coach, in that biggest deficiency has been the fact that he's lacked consistency over the last couple of years. It's sort of been a mixed bag of versions of Mesar that we've been seeing. He's excelled at times, sometimes because of injuries or a worse start to the year, he hasn't looked as great. And the same thing on a more global scale when he's played, either at the juniors, the world. For me, I still see a bit of a diminutive player. He'll have a bit of difficulty when it comes to the NHL level. He does possess a lot of skills. That can sort of push you a long way in terms of moving to the NHL level. But as we're seeing, especially playoffs, to have a little bit more grit to you, Mesar doesn't always exemplify that. I'll put him as a NHLer. I think he's going to have to work and develop very hard over the next couple of years.
Well, here we go. We have our first kind of little mini disagreement here. Flag for me is he was conspicuously absent from Slovakia's national team at the World Championships, right? Like a little bit surprised, figured that some former first round pick would be regarded by his own country to be playing. There's a lot of other kind of teams like that had even undrafted players that were a little bit of a flag. I think we know kind of what Mesar's strengths are. His skating is elite. Like he's got great speed, great hands, but doesn't really kind of go to the outside or to the inside of the ice very much, unfortunately. He has good vision. I'm not sure he's going to be able to put it together. I'm going to say that he's going to be a bubble NHLer, and I don't think it's going to be with Montreal.
Number 2, guys, Dobes, goaltender, Marko.
Listen, Jacob Dobes had a pretty hard start to the beginning of the season, right? Kind of thrown to the to the Sharks a little bit at the beginning of the season. Really, really young Laval team, first year of pro, and no veteran experience to back him up at all at the Laval. A bit of a tactical mistake, I think. John Sedgwick, I guess, who's the GM of the Laval Rocket, technically. I guess they weren't sure if they were going to have Primo there or not. But what's interesting is that once he got past that beginning of the season, guys, he played more games than anybody else in the AHL. So he was an absolute workhorse. You can say that if he was one of the main reasons why Laval was even close to competing for a playoff spot, to be honest. I'd say in the last 35 games or so, he was performing at a really high level, right? So what you like about Dobes is you can't buy size, you can't teach size. He's pretty active goaltender though. So I think they're working with him to try to be a little bit more quiet. He tends to move around a lot. and he's a little bit aggressive, right? It's great because you like the mindset of somebody who battles, but sometimes he gets himself a bit of a position, and then when you're kind of having lateral plays in the offensive zone, he can kind of sometimes get caught out of position, right? But the raw tools are there, coach. Like for me, I see that he has the potential to be an NHLer. At what level? Like I don't think he's going to be an elite starter, but I think he has the potential to maybe be a full-time backup at the very least at the NHL level.
Enortap.
Yeah, and again, I just want to clarify for everybody that when we talk about them being potential NHLers, it doesn't necessarily just mean in Montreal. As a matter of fact, sometimes, the situation might dictate that there could be a trade and therefore they're well suited for the NHL, but maybe for another team and not necessarily Montreal. Just wanted to sort of put that out there. But I think Marko alluded to it. You got a guy that's 6'4" and just over 200 pounds. I mean, that's his biggest asset. He's a massive goalie. Plays aggressively. He challenges the shooter quite a bit. I mean, his skating's not bad. He's got good instincts in terms of what the player and the defense in front of him are going to be doing at any given time. He tracks the puck well, in my eyes. He's good from that aspect. He does have sometimes difficulty with his transferring his weight and his size when he's going backwards and laterally as well from one post to the other. So he's a bit weak if somebody comes around the net and for him to get over and cover that case. And it's not something that's terribly wrong. It's these little kind of mistakes that will amount to what we would define as bad habits. Got to really work towards getting those polished over the years. But everything else, he's got probably his weakest aspect is his glove. I think he's better on his blocker side than he is his glove side. But that's something that, again, will improve. But he's great low and close to the net. He's especially up high on his blocker side. He's very strong there. I would say he's an NHLer as well, but I would agree as a backup.
Then Konyushkov.
Again, a bit of an interesting choice when they did select him. My eyes. I mean, he's come a long way. I know in his rookie KHL season, put up, I think it was somewhere around 25, 26 points, which wasn't bad. He's mobile and he does move the puck quite efficiently from what I'm seeing. Doesn't just necessarily make the first pass. He really does a good job of scanning where that availability is and where all his players are, or if somebody's coming to him. And he does that in all three zones, which is quite good to see as well. The problem, of course, will be where does he fit in to the logjam that we have in Montreal, and does he fit at an NHL level? If he does fit into the NHL level, he'll definitely be a lower pairing defenseman that can move the puck, that's for sure. But you got to believe it's not going to be anytime soon that he comes to North America and is able to develop with either Montreal or another team if he's traded and sort of work on that aspect of his game. But right now I would put him as a bubble player, but he definitely has the potential.
Marko?
Well, that's a tricky one, right? Guys, unfortunately, we just don't have a lot of viewings of him, right? Because he plays in the KHL. I've seen a couple of clips, but I don't think, to be full transparency, I haven't seen a full game of his, right? From what you read, though, he's a right-handed defenseman, 6 foot, not huge, but just right 6 feet, good skater. Like you said, plays under Larionov. A lot of playing minutes, though, for a guy his age. The KHL is not known for a league that plays a lot of young players. You can see Demidov, playing in the junior league, the MHL. He does play on the same team as Siliev as well. So obviously, I can't remember what the team is, but obviously they don't have a problem playing younger defensemen, right? Because Siliev played a lot, and so did Konyushkov. Listen, I think this guy's a hidden gem, right? Montreal does not have the same level of depth on the right side of their defense. He seems like there's some offensive upside there and decent size, right? On what I'm reading, I think he has 2 more years on his contract. So by the time he's ready to come to North America, he's going to be a guy that's ready to jump right in. The KHL, you can argue, is the second best league in the world. So he's going to come in at around 23, 24 years old when he's ready to come to North America. Depending on what happens with Montreal's depth, I think he's kind of like a bit of a wild card, right? I'm going to say NHLer, but I don't have a high level of confidence because, again, I haven't seen him that much. But I just suspect that he's going to come to the Habs organization at the right time when they need, another right-handed defenseman, because they might need to move somebody to do something on at the forward level, right? So I'll take a risk and I'll say NHLer Bogdan Konyushkov.
Next one, Oliver Kapanen, the draft 64 overall pick in 2021. And I would like to hear from you, Marko, first.
Oliver Kapanen, I think his stock is rising. For the longest time, I think all of us, coach and Enortap, we've talked about him as probably one of the more underrated of the Habs prospects. I think it's hard to make the claim that he's underrated now. I think everybody has come to learn a lot more about Kapanen, especially since the World Championships, right? Really strong playoff for him too. I believe he led the playoffs in scoring, or led his team in scoring during the playoffs. What I've always liked about Kapanen is he's a two-way player, right? Like, he's got good size. He has good wheels for a guy his size, and he plays heavy. Not all big players play heavy, but he does play heavy. Like, he goes into the corners. He can win puck battles. He has a good stick, plays heavy on his stick as well, wins the stick battles, really good face-offs. And as we saw, like, he's a surprisingly sneaky good finisher as well, right? So I think he's going to be an NHL. Question, will it be in Montreal? Because will they need to make a move here? Because maybe there's other prospects on this list, because I see his upside as maybe a third line center, and maybe there's another prospect that we'll cover later that might have a little bit of an inside edge on that. I think he's an NHLer. Whether it's in Montreal or not, that's a whole other question.
Great. Enortap.
Well, this guy's got all the instincts as far as I'm concerned, and I think we just saw that on an international level as well. Like, he's got a good nose for where the net is. He gets himself in the right spot. He's got very, what's the word I'm looking for, lethal finishing skills. Like, he's got a strong ability to track down the puck as it's being shot from different parts of the ice and make contact with the puck just to deflect it in front of the net. And you might recall the majority of the 6 goals that he scored at the WCs, that's where they were, in front of the net, parked, and just making great deflections. He recognizes his space very well, and he takes advantage. Like, even if there's the slightest mistake that's made by a defender, he's got the ability to take advantage of that. And he's also, believe it or not, he's not just a good goal scorer, he's also a good playmaker. He'll tend to draw in a lot of the pressure, and then he'll quickly dish it off to an open teammate. This is one area that Montreal has had difficulty with, having somebody in front of the net, especially on a power play, execute that kind of skill. And so I do believe he will be an NHLer.
Sound good. Next one, Logan Mailloux.
Yeah, and of course I have him ranked third for Montreal in my books. That's how much I think of him so far. I think he had a fantastic year with Laval this year. He had just over 40 points in around 62 games. He's a hard worker. He seems to be learning. He had some deficiencies in his defensive game, but he became much stronger in his defensive coverage from the second part of the season on. Of course, he's got that big 6'3" body frame, 220 pounds, and he's not afraid to get his nose dirty and use that physicality that he brings to the table. And it's something that not only Montreal needs, but when you get to the playoffs, you want to have those types of defenders on your team, of course. He's got a heavy, hard shot, and he's very accurate with it. He could have time on, and probably will, on the power play as well. With who, and whether it's the first or second power play, that remains to be seen, depending on how some other players that we'll talk about later develop. He's confident. I'm seeing that in his play. His transition is good. He's got a lot of the physical tools that he brings that will, I believe, translate easily to being an NHLer in my eyes.
Marko.
I think the good news, first of all, guys, is nobody is talking about his former off-ice issue. I think for the most part, that's behind him. The organization did a great job kind of working with him through that. He had, like you guys mentioned, a very strong year in Laval. I believe he finished first for rookie scoring for defensemen. He might have been up there for rookie scoring, not just among defensemen, but all players, I think. Really, really strong season. Yeah, at the All-Star game. To me, I think what was the most impressive was to see the evolution in his game from the preseason to the final game that he played when he got called up. What was really, because if you guys recall last summer and when we were talking about him before, a lot of people, we were seeing, that play against Hughes where he was really aggressive on the penalty kill. He started chasing Hughes around and he got burnt. And, I think we all realized, okay, so listen, he's got a lot of learning to do. But what I said then, I'm going to apply to kind of where I think he is now. A player like that, I think he has all the physical tools to be an elite and impact NHL defenseman in the NHL. The only thing that he needed to do and how quickly he became an NHL defenseman was all based on how quickly he's willing to learn and implement the things that he's being coached on. And what I saw when he came up, I think it's a very small sample size, one game, but based on what you saw in Laval, I watched a lot of Laval games this year. And based on what I saw when he came up for that last game, he definitely was picking his spots more. Less is more with him. And like you said, he's probably the guy with the biggest bomb. Coach, you had a video a couple days ago talking about what are the components of a successful power play. One of the components that Montreal doesn't have is a guy with a rocket, right? He's definitely a guy that has that kind of rocket. I haven't seen him use a one-timer as much, but there's no question that he has a bullet of a slap shot, and it's pretty precise. I'm going to go on a limb. By the way, I'm going to find what we mean by impact NHLer. Doesn't mean, I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star or elite, but impact can mean a lot of different things, right? Like, to me, a top 4 defenseman in Montreal that is going to be physical, that can play a second unit power play, eat up like 22 minutes. To me, that's an impact in it. I think he's going to have a long career in the NHL, and I think he's going to be a top 4 defenseman. So I'm going to put our first impact NHLer, Logan Mailloux.
Sound good. Great assessment about Logan Mailloux. Here we go. The MVP, Memorial Cup 2024. Draft 33, overall pick 2022.
I think it all ties in, guys. Like we were talking earlier about Kapanen, and maybe his ceiling is the third line center. And I was alluding to, maybe there's somebody else that has a little bit more of an inside track on that position. And obviously that's Owen Beck. I think everything that we wanted to see from Filip Mesar as an older player playing in the CHL, we saw from Owen Beck, right? Strong season. At points, he dominated on a very good Saginaw team, obviously, but had a really strong playoff, obviously was the MVP at the Memorial Cup. What I'm seeing, like, I kind of compare it to Nick Suzuki, right? Like Nick Suzuki in his last year in the OHL went to the Memorial Cup. I wouldn't say he was as dominant as Suzuki in his final year, but I think it's close, right? Like, he definitely kind of looked like he was a step above a little bit everybody else for the type of player he is, right? Like, he's not Connor Bedard. He's not going to score 130 points. But in terms of playing the type of game that he plays, which is a strong two-way game, like potentially in the OHL, he's top 6 forward, but that plays an amazing two-way game, wins faceoffs, and you can use in every position, right? In every situation. Listen, like, I was a little concerned just because he had such a strong camp his first year, and all Habs fans had him penciled in to make the team the next year. So I think all of us were like, okay, yes, we're excited about Owen Beck, but he needs some time. And even going back to his World Junior Championship, didn't have the strongest World Championship. If you're going to be a two-way center and that's going to be your bread and butter, then you really have to kind of pay attention to the details. And from what I saw in the second half of the year after Christmas, after the World Junior Championship, it looks like Beck really kind of started to focus in on that. For me, like, his stock has been kind of a little bit up and down. Right now, obviously, he's on the upswing with how strong of a tournament that he had. So I'm going to be looking at his camp very closely and see. To me, I'm not going to call him an impact NHLer, but he has the potential to have a very, very long NHL career. I almost put him in the middle, right? Like, of being, when we say NHLer, it could be a guy that plays like 500 games in the NHL. I think Owen Beck could easily play 800 or 1,000 games in the NHL as a third line center, and maybe eventually, as he gets older, kind of like a fourth line center. That's where I would have.
Good. Enortap.
Well, for me, I've always been very bullish with Beck. I liked him from the first day that they drafted him. Very intelligent hockey player. I mean, we saw quite a difference when he went from Peterborough to Saginaw. Strong, very athletic player. Has endeared himself with many of the scouts that have witnessed him play. He plays strong down the middle. In my eyes, he's got, I would say, above average speed. He's able to, push the tempo of the game. He wins battles, gets in people's faces when, especially the game gets more important. He tends to elevate his game a little bit more. And also with his work ethic, he can really create situations out of nothing. His execution is good. I'm not only talking from recency bias and having seen him get the MVP with Saginaw when they defeated London at the Memorial Cup, but it's been coming on for quite a while for Beck. I know he had a bit of a setback his second year after a promising first year at camp with Montreal, but this guy, to me, He projects to be probably a bottom six centerman, but I think he's the kind of player that's very versatile and play up and down the lineup in a pinch, different situations. And I'm really gung-ho on seeing him, and I would consider him to be a marginal impact player for Montreal.
Next one, draft 62 overall pick, one of the best NCAA player the last 2 seasons. Well, of course, with the Boston University and maybe overall the league. I'm talking about Lane Hutson.
Yeah, for me, I right now have him ranked as a number one prospect for Montreal. I really love everything I see about him. I mean, you can make the argument that a bit on the diminutive side, being at, and the controversies out there. Is he 5'9"? Is he 5'10"? Did he grow or did he not put on any weight? But it doesn't matter, because if you look at what he brings to the table and the kind of skill set that he has, I would just wonder if he were 6'2" or 6'3", whether he would have that same skill set. And so you might be having an advantage in size, but you'd be losing a lot of the other things that he can do. And some of the things he does, like he sees the ice very well. He identifies plays to make for the puck. He gambles at the right time. He sees the passes that are there. He's always 1 or 2 steps ahead of the opposition in terms of what he's going to do. He's got a really an uncanny knack to sort of execute plays, and he sort of glides like from east to west in trying to execute a lot of his plays. He's not like that power forward, obviously, that will go north-south and drive to the net. But he's got a very good shot as well. He plays extremely well under pressure. He does not panic with the puck, and we saw that even when he came up for the 3 or 4 games he played with Montreal last year. Right now, I don't see him having anything else to prove at the junior level. Having been named the Hobey Baker Award finalist and then winning gold with the Team USA at the World Juniors. This guy projects to be an impact player in the NHL, and I'm so glad that Montreal drafted him.
Listen, I don't think I'm not going to do a scouting report. Everybody knows who Lane Hutson is, what he does. He's the king of deception, and we all know kind of the upside of Lane Hutson offensively that he has. So really the only thing for me, I don't have any concern necessarily about his ability to defend. You're assuming I'm going to put him there, Coach, eh? You're assuming. I don't know yet. I'm still debating it myself.
He's just measuring the squares.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, if you're just comparing squares, then that's the only thing I have concern. Like watching the playoffs, guys, and just how physical and barbaric it is during the playoffs. I have my doubt, not because of his height, but just because of his size, like his strength, ability to put on a little bit more muscle concerns me, like in terms of him really being able to survive. Like I know he's really smart and that he is going to avoid a lot of contact. I'm going to say that he's an NHLer, but I could regret that easily. Like I could definitely, he has the potential to be an impact NHLer. I just have to hedge my bets a little bit, not because of his height, but because of his like weight and his strength, right? I'm going to hedge myself a little bit. I think he'll have a good NHL career. I think it would be really important if he can be a top 4 defenseman for Montreal. I have to reserve a little bit of doubt.
All right, next one, draft 92 overall pick again at 2022 for the Montreal Canadiens, Adam Engstrom. Next, Marko.
Well, Adam Engstrom, for me, he's a smooth skating, 2-way defenseman, doesn't overwhelm you with any particular aspect of his game. He's not super offensive, very solid defensively, but I wouldn't call him a shutdown physical defenseman either. I would say he's kind of a little bit more of a bigger and a slightly more robust Jordan Harris. Just that has that ability to kind of be a 2-way player. For me, like just based on there's 2 things to look at, right? Like you can talk about what his future is with Montreal, and also what if we think he's going to be an NHLer. In terms of in Montreal, he might end up being an important piece if they end up moving another left-handed defenseman ahead of him in order to secure something up front. If that's the case, then they'll need that depth. And I think he easily could be somebody that, is going to be like a good third pairing defenseman for you in the NHL for a long time. I think he's an NHL player for sure. Again, I don't have as many viewings as him, obviously. Like we haven't seen him. He doesn't play CHL. So I don't have as much viewing as him. It's really just kind of clips and just, reading, right? So I'm a little less familiar with, but based on kind of what I know about him and kind of what I've read, I think he's somebody that has the potential to have an NHL career. It really depends though where it's going to be is what Montreal does in terms of moving its assets around.
Enortap?
Well, with Engstrom, really, it's quite a ride for Montreal the last 2 seasons with him. I think he's came on the scene. I'm not sure we were expecting as much as we did see from him. He was a top defenseman in Sweden, playing with the SHL. The kind of player that can chew up a lot of minutes. Very much a positive impact on for the team when he's on the ice. He's good size. I think he's at 6'2", if I'm not mistaken. Last time I checked, he's got a good touch. His puck handling skills pretty good. His transition game is strong. He does have to work a little bit more from what I can see on his back skating. That's a little bit weak from every report that I read. I think he will translate to be an NHLer. I just don't know if it's going to be with Montreal, to be totally honest with you.
We're not having him as Enortap. You didn't put him as an impact NHLer, right?
No,
moving him
no.
on.
Yeah. I was going to say, let's have that on the record. Enortap thinks that Engstrom's going to be a 4-time All-Star.
There you go. Mr. Fowler, the goaltender from the Boston College.
Well, right now he's a very young goalie, and as we know, goalies usually take a little bit longer to develop. But what a year he had at Boston College is just amazing. I think he's established himself as a top goalie prospect in the sport, and he's been very, very consistent. He's very dedicated. Like, he's got a mindset that not much bothers him, even if he gets scored on. Like, he's up and about already and thinking about the next save that he needs to make. He was named USHL's all-star team, all-rookie team. He was one of the top leaders, both in, I believe, save percentage as well as goals against average. Got some really good talent at that level. He stonewalled them, and we saw that even in the playoffs. There were nights where he single-handedly kept the team BC in the mix going forward. I still think that there's some development that has to continue with him, but he's the kind of goalie that will learn very quickly. He's made great strides. Like, one of the complaints, I think, around the time that he was drafted was, about his conditioning and being a little bit overweight, but he's made strides to correct that as well. And even though I didn't see a lot of the games, but the ones that I did see, I didn't see any evidence of that as being a deterrent to his game. I think this guy, Jacob Fowler, has the ability to be not only an NHLer, but a number one goalie. I'm hesitating to put him in the Impact NHLer just yet. I would need to see a little bit more because we're basing it on a small sample size. So can we kind of put him in between Impact and NHL?
Oh, there's no in between. No in between.
Okay, so put him on the NHLer for now. But
I love how coach is moving it really slowly to give you the opportunity to change your mind.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm doing right now. Are you sure, Mr. Enortap, about that one?
Okay, put it back.
Way back. We'll go back on that one now.
I'll go on a limb. I'll classify him as an Impact energy.
What about you, Mr. Marko?
For me, Fowler, I think I'd have him ranked number 2 overall in terms of Habs prospects. I really, really believe a lot in Fowler. I think you nailed it, right? Like, definitely there's the biggest concern with him was his conditioning, and I don't know if they put him on Ozempic or what, but obviously that's not an issue anymore. He seems to play a lot of games, and his conditioning seems pretty good. What I love with this guy, he seems like a general out there. Maybe it's because as a Habs fan, we're a little bit biased seeing somebody like Carey Price. I'm not comparing him to Carey Price. He has that kind of presence in the crease that I find just really reassuring when I'm watching him play, and I think that also transposes with his teammates. He just looks like a guy who's very confident. He's in control. He's imposing in his crease. I love his competitiveness. I love his interview at the Combine. Like, I just love everything about this guy. I think for sure Impact NHLer. I think he's going to be a really, really important part of Montreal's future. So really, really excited to see him. Not next year. Hopefully we get to see him play some AHL games in 25-26.
And the last one, guys, draft 5th overall pick in 2023, Mr. David Reinbacher.
So David Reinbacher, listen, I think we all are familiar with his journey last year. Not in the best of positions. If Montreal had any sense that they were going to be putting him in the kind of position that they were, I'm sure they would have made a different decision. They had trust in the management and coaching team that was there, that he was going to be playing, but things just went very, very wrong over there. So it's very hard. Most people that are looking at his performance this year don't understand the context of what he was going through in terms of the dynamics of that team. I just throw all of that out the water, to be honest. You just have to throw it away. And to me, what I look at is kind of how he performed when he was here in North America. Based on that, I saw somebody who adapted very, very quickly to an NHL-sized rink. I saw somebody who very much acclimatized himself very well with his teammates, endeared himself to his teammates. I don't think anybody really had any question about his skill, like his skating, his size. I think he definitely has the potential to be a top 2 defenseman for Montreal. To me, he's an impact NHL player.
Great point. Mesar Enortap.
I like Reinbacher quite a bit. I'll be honest with you. It's what we needed, a right-handed defenseman. I think that's sort of what projected us the direction that we went to in picking him at number 5. Talk about being put into a pressure cooker right away and being scrutinized under the microscope from the moment he was picked, because there were all sorts of opinions in terms of where Montreal should have gone with that pick. And then when he started to play, there was all that conversation centered around his knee and saying that maybe this is a degenerative problem that he has. And, did we waste a high pick like we did? And then you throw on top of that the fact that he went to Cloton. They had a really bad year there. They didn't project the year to be as bad as it was. But you know what? He put all of that behind him. He was very professional in the process. I think he focused on his own development. It was hard because we didn't have direct impact on his development. And it would have been better, I believe, if he had been here in North America. But, this he's got great size. He's going to chew up tons and tons of minutes in all sorts of different situations. He's got poise. I don't think he buckles under pressure. He moves well, both laterally and north-south as well. I like a lot of things about him. The only reason I'm not going to put him into the Impact NHL level yet, and I'm going to put him at the top NHLer level, is because we don't have a lot to draw that opinion upon just yet. I think after he plays a full year at Laval this year, we're going to see, whether he's going to be able to be at that level or not. So I'm reserving a little bit of cautious reservation about putting him into that first category. So for now, I'll say he's a 2-3 defenseman.
Very interesting that you have no reservations on Hutson, but you have reservations on Reinbacher.
Not reservations, Marko, per se. I think he's going to be with Montreal for a long, long time. I think he definitely, he's no. Go back. but I'm just being a little bit more cautious because I want to see him a little bit more frequently and performing at a more consistent level. That's my only concern.
When you see the board right there, any change, any modification, anyone's going to be go maybe at the bubble, or maybe someone can go to AHL.
Yeah, the only one it would make sense, like if I think Mesar will be a bubble player. I think that if he stays in Montreal system, he could be an AHL player. But I think he'll probably find some NHL team to play at least 200 games. I think he'll play at least 200 games in the NHL, Mesar. I just don't think he'll be with Montreal. I don't see anybody from here that's not going to at least play 200 games in the NHL.
Now I'm going to add the one we did not mention: Farrell, Kitney, Hanneman, Talk, Jekai, a Rover. Any one of them, maybe two, you expect them to be an NHL. Not as a bubble, but more like an NHL player.
Okay, for me, two names stand out for me, and that's Florian Jekai and Tuck as well. I think that both of them have the size, physicality, the skill set that will make them very good players up front for us. And that's an area that we're sorely lacking in, and we're trying to correct it through the current management that we have. So those two for me stand out as not possible NHLers. I think they both will be NHLers in my eyes.
I have to agree. Not much to add there. I think out of this list, I think Tuck and Jekai have the potential to be really good. Maybe at the top end, they play on your third line, but most likely more a fourth line kind of physical player kind of guys. Coach, what I see here when I look at this whole grid is we have a lot of mid talent, right? Montreal has good NHL players, but not a lot of impact NHL players in their pipeline yet. I think that's a great segue to talk about, what's going to be happening in less than a month, right? Like we have another big draft coming up, and it just shows you how important it is that Ken Hughes and Jeff Gordon really, really hit a home run with that 5th overall pick, because you can debate with us here and there about, okay, so nibbling around the edges a little bit as to whether this guy's an impact NHLer or just an NHLer. But as you can see from our grid, there's not a lot of consensus, impact NHLers in the pipeline. So it's going to be important for them to really hit on this pick, Coach.
Well said, both of you. So a great show today. A little bit longer, guys, for the people who watch the Habs Summer Target. But look, this is a way to learn a little bit more about the players, not to give you only the name because he's going to be an NHL. That's how. That's what we deliver every single time, because we have great people like Marko and Enortap, and that's the reason we try to bring you the best contents about the Montreal Canadiens. Thanks for watching another Habs Summer Target. I can wait to see both of you during the next video.
But before we leave, we invite you, don't forget to click on the like, subscribe to the channel, and finally let us a comment about this video. And remember, you have greatness inside of you, and we wishes you an amazing, great, and blessing day.